After President Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis and subsequent trip to Walter Reed, a mad scramble began to do as much contact tracing as possible leading up to the early Friday morning announcement. Because, well, it seems that he hosted, or at least attended, a few super-spreader events, including the nominating ceremony for Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett, where no less than 12 people who later tested positive for COVID-19 were in attendance. And pundits were ablaze with speculation after a Washington Post article revealed that Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett had tested positive for COVID-19 during this past summer. But we shouldn't speculate on whether or not she was still spreading the virus, even though summer was only a few weeks ago. COVID, Amy. I'm Freddie Mancia, and this is the MAN-splanation. Since the Washington Post sources spoke on background, we really shouldn't speculate on whether or not she may or may not have been the super spreader at the super spreader event. COVID, Amy. And we shouldn't speculate on whether or not maybe someone in her entourage got COVID from her after she did and was asymptomatic while in attendance at the super spreader event. And we shouldn't speculate on whether or not she was spreading the virus while meeting with members of Congress right after the super spreader event. COVID, Amy. And we shouldn't speculate on whether or not she was spreading the virus while continuing to teach in person at Notre Dame, where there has been at least one outbreak, and reportedly more than 40 members of the football team have had to quarantine and or isolate, including a player who was throwing up on the sideline during a game next to the rest of the team. COVID Dame. They're probably doing all right, even though the president of the college later tested positive for COVID-19 after attending the super spreader event. But he's probably got things under control. Even though his earlier plan for students who became infected with COVID-19 while on campus was to send them home, back to their communities. Something he came up with reportedly without talking to health professionals. COVID Jenkins. But we shouldn't speculate on whether or not the president got infected while around one of them before he made his way to a rally in Pennsylvania that night, where multiple members of the Pennsylvania House GOP delegation were in attendance. Multiple members pictured without masks. But I won't speculate on whether or not someone in attendance at the Trump rally have contracted COVID-19 there and may or may not have taken it back to the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Of course, the Pennsylvania House did have to cancel session last week because State Representative Paul Schemmel tested positive for COVID. But he was supposedly quick to inform the necessary people. And hey, I will not speculate on whether or not he was asymptomatic by the time scheduled ceremonial session of the Pennsylvania House, scheduled to take place at a Harrisburg church. The church supposedly took precautions before their next Sunday service. And I won't speculate on whether or not Representative was spreading COVID-19 during a scheduled gun rally that he may or may not have attended, that took place on the steps of the Pennsylvania Capitol, where most in attendance weren't wearing masks. Actually, I won't speculate on those because I couldn't actually confirm too many details on those events, at least not on the public-facing GOP sites. Why? Most were outdated, and everyone had a warning about a not secure connection. That's troubling. Just like I couldn't find any information about this new measure, creating an election committee that would have intrusive tools to investigate this upcoming election during the election.
Quote, Pennsylvania Republicans want to create and control an election integrity panel with subpoena power. Washington Post, in their coverage, described the committee that the Republicans in the state legislature want to create as having, quote, wide-ranging powers to investigate the vote, including the ability to subpoena election officials and members of the U.S. Postal Service while the election and vote counting are still in progress.
Wow, that'd be a good thing to have on the website. The staff had to hurry home after Representative Schimmel's announcement. But I won't speculate on whether or not the super spreader event for members of the staff of Notre Dame, where there may or may not be a current outbreak of COVID-19, somehow infected President Trump, later passed it on to members of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, where there is currently a COVID outbreak, the White House and the Pennsylvania House both experiencing their second two. This is the number 2 for both. We shouldn't speculate. But when you put your colleagues and loved ones in harm's way, when you try to change the rules in the middle of an election you think you're going to lose, or when you are constantly getting the facts wrong, or even not answering the simplest of questions, what else are we supposed to do? COVID presidency. Hey guys, I just wanted to hop on here just to say that definitely double check the info that I presented in this episode. Some of the numbers have changed. More people are testing positive for COVID since that super spreader event. So definitely be updated, because there might be even further updates after this. There definitely will be more updates after this. So definitely keep listening. But I did also want to just say that one of Trump's most loyal advisors, Stephen Miller, he's actually tested positive for COVID-19. I guess he didn't get it the first time around when the White House was having an outbreak, when his wife got it. But I'm really glad I didn't go to City Center this week. That was a really good call. COVID City.
Binge.